Jack Miller wiped sweat from his forehead as he tightened the last bolt on the air scrubber. The machine hummed back to life, pushing clean air through the metal corridors of Outposts Zeta 9. Jack smiled. Another problem fixed, life on the edge of explored space wasn't exciting. Most days, Jack fixed broken things, air scrubbers, water filters, door panels. The work was boring but needed. Without Jack and the other maintenance workers, the outpost would fail and everyone would die. Not that anyone thanked them. Jack put his tools back in his belt and called the control room on his radio. "Miller here. Section 12 air scrubber is working again." "Good job, Miller," said the voice of Commander Harris. "Now get to the loading bay. A supply ship just docked and they need help unloading." Jack sighed and headed for the elevator. More lifting and carrying. Just another day, the loading bay was busy when Jack arrived. Workers moved boxes from the supply ship to the storage area. Jack reported to the dock manager, a short woman named Linda Porter. "Miller, good. Take this loader and help with the special cargo section." Linda pointed to a small vehicle used for moving heavy boxes. Jack drove the loader to the back of the supply ship where a man in a science uniform waited. Dr. Greg Owen was the outpost's lead scientist, a thin man with glasses, who rarely left his lab. "Careful with these," Dr. Owen said, pointing to 5 metal containers. "They're marked special for a reason." Jack nodded and began loading the containers. 4 were standard size, but the 5th was different, smaller, and Jack noticed something odd: tiny holes in the metal sides, air holes. As Jack lifted this container, he heard a sound from inside, a soft scratching. Then a quiet whine. "Dr. Owen," Jack said, "there's something alive in here." The scientist looked nervous. "Just a specimen for the lab. Nothing to worry about. Be gentle with it." Jack carefully placed the container on the loader, but couldn't stop thinking about the sound. It hadn't sounded like a lab rat or any normal test animal. It had sounded ... Later that night, after his shift ended, Jack couldn't sleep. The whining sound from the container kept playing in his mind. What creature was locked in there? What tests was Dr. Owen planning? Jack got dressed and left his small room. The night shift was minimal, just enough people to monitor systems and handle emergencies. No one noticed Jack as he took the elevator down to the science level. The lab was dark except for the glow of computer screens. Jack used his maintenance code to open the door. A perk of his job was access to almost every part of the outpost. He moved quietly past workstations until he reached the storage area. The small container sat in a corner, still sealed. The scratching sound was louder now, more desperate. Jack checked the label on the side. Specimen DX7, Juvenile Draconis ferox, warning, extreme danger. Jack froze. Everyone knew about the Draconis ferox. They were the most feared predators in known space. Massive lizard-like creatures with armor-plated skin, razor claws, and a bite that could cut through metal. Space travelers told stories about ships found drifting, crews dead with evidence of Draconis attacks, but what was a baby one doing here? Jack's common sense told him to leave immediately, to forget what he'd seen. Draconis ferox were killers. But the whining continued, and it didn't sound like a monster. It sounded like a scared, hurt animal. Against his better judgment, Jack entered his override code and unlocked the container. He lifted the lid slowly, ready to slam it shut at the first sign of danger. Inside, curled in a ball, was a creature about the size of a house cat. Its scaled body was a deep blue with green patterns. 2 damaged wings were folded against its back. It looked up at Jack with large, emerald eyes that seemed too intelligent for an animal. The creature was clearly hurt. A wound on its side had been bandaged poorly, and it seemed weak. It made no move to attack. Instead, it watched Jack with what looked like curiosity. "What are they going to do to you?" Jack whispered. He checked the computer near the storage area and found Dr. Owen's notes. The young Draconis had been found near a destroyed mining station. Its pack was gone, likely killed by the station's defenses before they all died too. Dr. Owen planned to study the creature's biology, which was a nice way of saying he would cut it apart once he had approval. Jack looked back at the small predator. Yes, it would grow into a dangerous killer, but right now it was just a hurt baby, alone and scared. Something in those green eyes spoke to him. This is really stupid, Jack told himself as he gently closed the container, leaving the lid unlocked, and carried it out of the lab. Back in his quarters, Jack made a nest of old clothes in his small bathroom. He filled a bowl with water and found some meat from his dinner ration. The young Draconis sniffed the offering cautiously before eating hungrily. "You need a name," Jack said, watching the creature. "How about Sadie?" "My grandmother had a cat." "Named Sadie. She was blue too." The Draconis made a soft, chirping sound and continued eating. "Sadie it is, then." Over the next few days, Jack cared for Sadie in secret. He cleaned and properly bandaged her wound. He brought her meat from the cafeteria and learned she also liked fish. Her damaged wings began to heal, though Jack wondered if she would ever fly. Sadie grew stronger each day. She followed Jack around his quarters like a puppy, chirping and making small roaring sounds that made Jack laugh. When he returned from his shifts, she would be waiting by the door, eager for attention. A week after rescuing Sadie, Jack was summoned to the commander's office. His heart sank. Had they discovered his theft? Commander Harris was not alone. Dr. Owen and Security Chief Allison Reeves stood beside his desk, both looking angry. "Miller," Commander Harris said, "a valuable specimen has disappeared from the science lab. The security logs show your code was used that night." Jack said nothing. "This is a serious offense," Chief Reeves said. "That creature is dangerous." "It's a Draconis ferox, Miller. Do you understand what that means?" "It will grow into a killing machine." "She," Jack said quietly. "Sadie is a she, not an it." Dr. Owen looked stunned. "You named it? Are you insane?" "That she belongs to a species responsible for hundreds of human deaths. She was hurt and scared," Jack said. "You were going to kill her, for science," Dr. Owen said. "To understand a dangerous species. You want to see her?" Jack asked suddenly. "See how dangerous she is?" Before anyone could answer, Jack pressed the come button on his wrist device. "Sadie, come." He had taught her this command over the past days. The office door was closed, but they all heard scratching from the other side. Commander Harris reached for his sidearm while Chief Reeves moved protectively in front of the commander. Jack opened the door. Sadie bounded in, now the size of a large dog after just a week of proper care. Her scales gleamed, and her wings had begun to unfold. She ignored everyone else and went straight to Jack, rubbing against his legs like a cat. "This is Sadie," Jack sighed, kneeling to stroke her scaled head. "I've been raising her in my quarters. She's smart, smarter than any animal I've ever seen, and she hasn't tried to hurt me once." Sadie looked at the others in the room and made a low sound in her throat. It wasn't quite a growl, but a warning. She positioned herself between Jack and the others. "She's protecting me," Jack said. "She understands." Commander Harris lowered his weapon slowly. "That's impossible. Draconis ferox are mindless killers." "Says." "Who?" Jack asked. "Has anyone ever tried to understand them? Or do we just kill them on sight because we're afraid?" For a long moment, no one spoke. Sadie stayed by Jack's side, watching the others cautiously. Finally, Chief Reeves broke the silence. "It seems bonded to you." "She," Jack corrected again. "And yes, we've bonded. I saved her, and she knows it." Commander Harris studied the scene before him. A maintenance worker and a creature from humanity's nightmare list, somehow existing in harmony. "Miller," he said finally, "you've created quite a problem for us." 3 years passed on Outpost 8 and 9. Jack Miller's life had changed in ways he never imagined. After the tense meeting in Commander Harris's office, a surprising decision was made. Instead of punishing Jack or killing Sadie, the commander had been curious enough to allow what he called a controlled experiment. Sadie now lived in a special habitat connected to Jack's quarters. The small bathroom nest was long gone. Sadie had grown from the size of a dog to the size of a small horse. Her blue-green scales shimmered in the light, and her once damaged wings now spread wide and strong. She could fly short distances within her habitat, which had been expanded twice to accommodate her growth. Jack entered the habitat carrying a large metal container. Dinner time, girl. Sadie lifted her head from where she had been resting. Her emerald eyes brightened at the sight of Jack. She made a chirping sound that had deepened over the years but still reminded Jack of their first days together. Yeah, I know, I'm late today. Jack opened the container, revealing several chunks of synthetic meat and 2 whole fish. Sadie had quite an appetite now. Had an emergency in Section 8? Oxygen levels were dropping? Sadie didn't rush for the food. Instead, she moved to Jack first, lowering her massive head to gently bump against his chest. Jack smiled and rubbed the sweet spot behind her ear holes, causing Sadie to make a rumbling sound of pleasure. You're getting heavy, Jack laughed as Sadie leaned into him. Careful or you'll knock me over. Only after greeting Jack did Sadie turn to her meal. She ate with surprising delicacy for such a large predator. Using her front claws to hold pieces while taking controlled bites, Jack sat on a bench and pulled out his tablet. He recorded notes about Sadie every day, her growth, behaviors, and their interactions. What had started as personal observations had become an official research project. Dr. Owen still resented Jack for stealing his specimen, but even he couldn't deny the value of the data Jack collected. Miller, are you in there? A voice called from the entrance to the habitat. Come in, Kate, Jack called back. Dr. Kate Thompson entered, carrying her own tablet and a scanner. Where Dr. Owen saw Sadie as just a test subject, Kate had become genuinely interested in understanding her. The young zoologist had joined the outpost 2 years ago and had been assigned to help document Sadie's development. How's our girl today? Kate asked, staying a respectful distance from Sadie, who was still eating. Good appetite. No signs of the skin irritation she had last week. The new supplements must be helping. Kate nodded and made notes. The commander wants a full update. Earth sent another message asking about her. Jack sighed. News of Sadie had reached Earth about a year ago, causing a political storm. Some military officials wanted Sadie transferred to a secure facility for proper study. Conservation groups argued she should be released to find others of her kind. Scientists debated the ethics of keeping an intelligent species in captivity. Through it all, Commander Harris had somehow managed to keep Sadie at the outpost with Jack. What do they want to know this time? Jack asked. The usual. Growth rate, intelligence assessments, aggression indicators. Kate looked up from her tablet. And they especially want to know if she's shown any signs of the famous Draconis roar. The Draconis roar was legendary among space travelers. It was said to paralyze victims with fear before the predator attacked. Jack had never heard Sadie roar. She made plenty of other sounds, chirps, growls, purrs, but never the bone-chilling roar from the stories. Nothing yet, Jack said. Maybe those stories are exaggerated. Or maybe she doesn't roar because she's never needed to hunt or fight. Maybe. Kate didn't sound convinced. The commander also said to tell you that Frank Daniels is arriving tomorrow. Jack groaned. Why is the regional director coming here? 2. See Sadie, of course. She's become quite famous, you know. The tame Draconis. Jack watched as Sadie finished her meal and began grooming herself like a giant cat. She's not tamed. That's not the right word. We understand each other. There's a difference. Kate smiled. Well, you can explain that to Director Daniels tomorrow. Try to make a good impression. There are still people who think Sadie should be removed from the outpost. After Kate left, Jack continued his evening routine with Sadie. They played a game where Jack would hide objects around the habitat, and Sadie would find them using her keen sense of smell. Then Jack read aloud from a book while Sadie listened. Jack wasn't sure how much human language Sadie understood, but she always seemed to pay attention when he read. That night, Jack couldn't sleep. He worried about Director Daniels' visit. What if the director decided Sadie was too dangerous to keep at the outpost? What if he ordered her transferred or worse? The next morning, Jack made sure Sadie's habitat was spotless. He brushed her scales until they gleamed and checked that the security measures were working properly. The habitat had special force fields that could contain Sadie if necessary, though they had never been activated. Director Frank Daniels arrived with an entourage of assistants and security personnel. He was a tall man with a stern face and a military bearing. Commander Harris led the group to Sadie's habitat, where Jack waited nervously. "So this is the famous Sadie," Director Daniels said, staring through the clear barrier at the massive predator, bigger than I expected. "She's still growing," Jack said. "Draconis can reach twice this size at full maturity." "And you claim she's docile?" Daniels sounded skeptical. "Not docile. Intelligent. She understands boundaries and respect." Jack activated the door to the habitat. "Would you like to meet her?" The security personnel tensed, hands moving to their weapons. Director Daniels hesitated, then nodded. "That's why I'm here." Jack entered first, calling softly to Sadie, who was watching the visitors with interest. "Sadie, we have guests." "This is important, girl." Sadie moved forward slowly, her massive head level with Jack's chest. She sniffed the air, taking in the scents of the newcomers. "Stay calm and don't make sudden movements," Jack advised as he motioned for Director Daniels to enter alone. "She can sense fear and tension." Director Daniels stepped into the habitat, visibly stiffening as Sadie turned her attention to him. The Draconis moved closer, sniffing the air around the director. "She's just getting to know you," Jack explained. "It's how she—" Director Daniels suddenly reached for something in his pocket. The quick movement startled Sadie, who backed up and made a low warning sound. One of the security officers outside misinterpreted the situation and raised his weapon. The action triggered something in Sadie. Her body tensed, her wings spread wide, and her emerald eyes narrowed. What happened next would be talked about throughout the outpost for months. Sadie opened her mouth and released a roar that seemed to shake the very walls. It wasn't just loud, it carried a frequency that made everyone freeze in place. Everyone except Jack, while Director Daniels and the others stood paralyzed by the famous Draconis roar. Jack calmly stepped between Sadie and the visitors. He placed a hand on Sadie's neck and spoke quietly to her. The roaring stopped. Director Daniels found his voice first. "The roar ... it affected everyone but you. How is that possible?" Jack shrugged. "I've raised her since she was small. I guess I'm immune, but the truth was more complex." Jack wasn't immune to the roar. He felt its power. But the roar didn't trigger fear in him because he had never seen Sadie as something to fear. Even now, with her full predatory nature on display, Jack knew Sadie wouldn't hurt him. The predator had roared, but the human didn't even blink. He'd raised one as a pet, after all. Director Daniels' visit changed everything. After witnessing Jack's control over Sadie, even during her intimidating roar, the director made a surprising decision. Instead of removing Sadie from the outpost, he expanded the research program. Jack was officially promoted from maintenance technician to Draconis behavioral specialist, a title that made him laugh but came with better pay. 6 months after the director's visit, Jack sat in the new observation room built next to Sadie's expanded habitat. Kate Thompson reviewed data on a large screen while Commander Harris and Security Chief Allison Reeves listened. "Her intelligence tests are off the charts," Kate said, pointing to a graph. "She's solving problems that would challenge a human child. The way she manipulates objects with her claws shows remarkable dexterity. And the communication system?" Commander Harris asked. Jack pressed a button on his tablet. A series of chirps, growls, and purrs played through the speakers. "We've identified 43 distinct sounds that have consistent meanings. It's not just noise, it's language." Chief Reeves still looked skeptical. "Even if she is intelligent, she's still a predator." "That roar affected everyone except Jack. It's a hunting tool." "Yes, but she's never used it to hunt," Jack pointed out. "She used it when she felt threatened. It's defensive." Their discussion was interrupted by an alarm. Red lights flashed, and the outpost's AI voice announced, "Attention all personnel. Unknown vessels approaching. Combat alert." "This is not a drill." Commander Harris rushed to the control room with Chief Reeves close behind. Jack and Kate exchanged worried looks. In all his years on the outpost, Jack had never heard a combat alert. Jack hurried to Sadie's habitat. The Draconis was already alert, her head raised high, sensing the tension in the air. It's okay, girl. Just stay calm. The outpost shook suddenly. Something had hit them. The lights flickered, then stabilized. Jack's radio crackled with Commander Harris's voice. All personnel to emergency stations. We are under attack. Repeat, we are under attack. Jack hesitated. His emergency station was in the maintenance section, where he would help keep critical systems running. But he didn't want to leave Sadie alone. Kate ran in, out of breath. Jack, the commander wants you and Sadie in the main hall right now. What? Why? No time to explain. Just come. Jack activated the release for Sadie's habitat door. Sadie, follow, quiet and careful. The massive predator moved smoothly behind Jack as they followed Kate through the corridors. People flattened themselves against walls as they passed, eyes wide at the sight of Sadie outside her habitat. Jack kept a hand on her neck, feeling the muscles tense beneath the scales. The main hall was chaotic. People rushed in all directions. While Commander Harris shouted orders from a raised platform, security personnel distributed weapons to anyone who could fight. Miller, over here. Commander Harris waved Jack toward the platform. Jack guided Sadie through the crowd, which parted quickly before them. On the platform, a large screen showed multiple red dots approaching the outpost. What are they? Jack asked. Vespula, Chief Reeves said grimly. Insect warriors from the Outer Rim. They've been expanding their territory for years. Why are they attacking us? Commander Harris pointed to a map. We're sitting on what they consider prime real estate. Our scans show their ships are carrying thousands of warrior drones and at least one queen. Queen? Jack didn't understand. Kate stepped forward. Vespula are a hive species. The queen controls the warriors telepathically. They're looking for new nesting grounds. Chief Reeves checked her weapon, and they don't ask permission. They just take what they want and kill anyone in the way. Another impact shook the outpost. The lights went out completely for several seconds before emergency power kicked in. They've breached the outer hull, someone shouted. All combat-ready personnel to Section 8, Chief Reeves ordered. Everyone else to the emergency shelters. Jack felt Sadie grow tense beside him. She was making a low sound he had never heard before, almost like a hum. Her eyes were fixed on the doorway leading to Section 8. What's wrong with her? Commander Harris asked. I don't know, Jack admitted. She's sensing something. Kate was watching Sadie with scientific interest even in the middle of the crisis. Look at her neck scales. They're standing up. Jack placed his hand on Sadie's head, trying to calm her. Instead of relaxing at his touch as she usually did, Sadie grew more agitated. She made a series of quick chirps followed by a low growl. She's trying to tell us something, Jack said. He had learned to interpret many of Sadie's sounds, but this pattern was new. Suddenly, Sadie's head swung toward a ventilation duct in the corner of the room. Her pupils narrowed to slits and her muscles bunched as if ready to spring. Everybody down! Jack shouted, following his instinct to trust Sadie's senses. The vent cover burst outward as something pushed through. It was like nothing Jack had ever seen, a creature with 6 limbs, a hard shell covering its body, and multiple eyes that glowed with an eerie yellow light. It moved with unnatural speed, leaping into the room with mandibles clicking. Sadie reacted before anyone else could. She launched herself across the room, intercepting the insect creature in midair. The two predators crashed to the floor in a tangle of claws, scales, and chitinous limbs. People scattered, some drawing weapons but unable to fire for fear of hitting Sadie. Jack watched in amazement as Sadie fought with a skill he had never seen her display. She wasn't the playful companion now, she was a true Draconis ferox, apex predator of a dozen worlds. The fight was brief but violent. Sadie's claws found gaps in the insect's armor while her powerful jaws clamped down on what appeared to be its neck. There was a sickening crunch and the creature stopped moving. Sadie stood over her kill, breathing heavily. A green fluid dripped from her claws, the Vespula's blood. She turned to Jack and made that same series of sounds again, chirps followed by a growl. I think she's saying there are more coming, Jack said, not knowing how he was so certain. Chief Reeves approached the dead Vespula cautiously. That was a scout. The warriors will be bigger, and there will be hundreds of them. Commander Harris looked at Sadie with new respect. She killed it without hesitation. Like she knew exactly what it was. Kate was already checking data on her tablet. There are records of Draconis Ferox and Vespula encounters on outer rim planets. They're natural enemies, competing apex predators. Another alarm sounded. The outpost's AI announced, multiple hull breaches detected, sectors 3, 5, and 9 compromised. Life support failing in affected areas. They're coming in from all sides, Chief Reeves said. We don't have enough security personnel to cover every breach. Jack looked at Sadie, who was still alert, her eyes tracking movement only she could detect. An idea formed in his mind, crazy, dangerous, but possibly their only hope. Commander, Jack said, I think Sadie can help us fight them. The Draconis? How? She knows these enemies. She can sense them before our equipment does, and she knows how to kill them. Jack placed his hand on Sadie's neck. Let me take her to the breach points. We can slow them down while you evacuate non-essential personnel. Commander Harris hesitated only briefly before nodding. Do it, Chief Reeves. Give Miller a weapon and a communication device. As Chief Reeves handed Jack a pulse rifle, Sadie made another sound, a soft purr that Jack recognized as approval. You understand what's happening, don't you? Jack whispered to her. You want to hunt. Sadie's emerald eyes seemed to gleam with intelligence and anticipation. The outpost shook again as more Vespula ships attached themselves to the hull. The hunt was about to begin. Jack moved quickly through the outpost corridors with Sadie at his side. The pulse rifle Chief Reeves had given him felt heavy in his hands. He had basic weapons training like all outpost personnel, but he had never needed to use it. Today, that would change. Section 5 breach is the closest, Jack said to Sadie as they ran. We'll start there. Sadie seemed to understand. She moved with purpose, her powerful legs carrying her effortlessly alongside Jack, her scales rippled with tension. Ready for battle. They reached Section 5 and found chaos. 3 security officers were firing at a group of Vespula warriors that had broken through a damaged airlock. The insect creatures were larger than the scout Sadie had killed, with thicker armor and more powerful limbs. They advanced despite the weapons fire, their mandibles clicking with horrible purpose. One security officer fell, his chest torn open by a Vespula's sharp front legs. The other 2 backed up, still firing but clearly losing ground. Get back, Jack shouted to them. Give her room. The officers looked confused until they saw Sadie. Their eyes widened with fear and hope as the massive predator moved past them toward the Vespula. Sadie paused for a moment, her emerald eyes tracking the movements of the insect warriors. Then she let out a roar that shook the corridor. The Vespula hesitated, their many eyes shifting toward this new threat. Jack expected Sadie to charge forward, but she surprised him. Instead of attacking directly, she leaped upward, using her powerful wings to reach the ceiling. She dug her claws into the metal and moved above the Vespula. Before they could react, she dropped down in the middle of their group. What followed was a display of predatory skill that left Jack in awe. Sadie moved like liquid lightning, striking with precision at weak points in the Vespula armor. Her claws found the joints between the hard plates, and her teeth crushed through the thinner sections, protecting vital organs. The remaining security officers recovered from their surprise and began firing again, carefully aiming at Vespula that were separated from Sadie. Jack joined them, his shots taking down an insect warrior that was trying to flank Sadie. In less than a minute, the corridor was clear of living Vespula. Green fluid pooled on the floor. Mixing with the red blood of the fallen security officer, Sadie stood among the bodies, breathing heavily but seemingly unhurt. She turned to Jack and made a chirping sound he recognized as triumph. Good girl, Jack said, approaching her carefully. He checked her for injuries but found only minor scratches on her scales. You know exactly how to fight them, don't you? Sadie responded with a low purr. Jack's communication device buzzed. Miller, this is Chief Reeves. What's your status? Section 5 is clear, Jack reported. Sadie took down most of them. We lost 1 officer, but the other 2 are okay. We need you in Section 9, Chief Reeves said. It's bad there, really bad. Jack looked at Sadie, ready for more? Sadie sniffed the air, then turned in the direction of Section 9. She seemed eager. To continue hunting, they moved through the outpost, occasionally encountering small groups of Vespula that Sadie dispatched with frightening efficiency. Jack noticed that she was developing strategies using the environment, attacking from unexpected angles and targeting specific parts of the Vespula bodies that seemed most vulnerable. When they reached Section 9, Jack understood why Chief Reeves had called it bad. A large hole had been torn in the outer hull, sealed only by emergency force fields that flickered unstably. Beyond the force fields, Jack could see a Vespula ship attached to the outpost like a parasite. Inside the section, at least 20 Vespula warriors were advancing toward a makeshift barricade where Chief Reeves and a dozen outpost personnel were making their last stand. There are too many, Jack said, doubting even Sadie could handle this many enemies. Sadie seemed to disagree. She moved forward without hesitation, her body low to the ground in a hunting posture. But instead of charging into battle, she stopped and turned to Jack. She made a series of sounds, chirps, growls, and that strange humming noise. Jack had spent years learning to interpret Sadie's communications, but this was complex. She seemed to be trying to tell him something important. I don't understand, Jack admitted. Sadie moved to a control panel on the wall and tapped it with her claw. Then she looked at Jack again, making the same pattern of sounds. Jack suddenly realized what she wanted. The environmental controls? You want me to change something about the room? Sadie chirped affirmatively. Jack quickly accessed the panel. What am I changing? Temperature, pressure, oxygen levels? When he said oxygen, Sadie chirped again. Lower the oxygen? Jack guessed. Another affirmative chirp. Jack didn't understand the strategy, but he trusted Sadie. He rapidly adjusted the environmental controls, lowering the oxygen levels in Section 9 to the minimum, safe level for humans. Sadie moved to the entrance of the section and waited. Jack joined Chief Reeves at the barricade. What are you doing? Reeves asked, firing another shot at the advancing Vespula. Sadie has a plan, Jack said, hoping he was right. As the oxygen levels dropped, Jack noticed a change in the Vespula. Their movements became slower, less coordinated. Some seemed to struggle for breath, their mandibles opening and closing rapidly. They need more oxygen than we do, Jack realized aloud. Sadie knew. Sadie chose that moment to attack. She burst from the entrance and tore into the now weakened Vespula warriors. The insect creatures tried to respond, but their movements were sluggish. Sadie moved among them like a force of nature, killing with precision and speed. Chief Reeves seized the opportunity. All units, fire now! The defenders opened fire from behind the barricade. Caught between Sadie and the barrage of weapons fire, the Vespula warriors fell quickly. When the last insect creature stopped moving, a cheer went up from the defenders. Sadie stood in the center of the carnage, her scales splattered with green. Fluid, but her posture proud and strong. How did you know to lower the oxygen? Chief Reeves asked Jack. I didn't. Sadie told me. Chief Reeves looked at the Draconis with new respect. She's not just a predator, she's a tactician. Jack's communication device buzzed again. It was Commander Harris. Miller, we've got a problem. The Vespula Queen has entered the outpost. She's heading for the central hub. We need Sadie there now. Jack looked at Sadie, who was already moving toward him, seemingly having heard the commander's words and understood their meaning. We're on our way, Jack said. As they ran toward the central hub, Jack felt a strange mix of fear and pride. Fear of the Vespula Queen, which would surely be more dangerous than any warrior they had faced, and pride in Sadie, who had proven herself, not just as a pet or research subject, but as a protector of the outpost of Jack's home. When they reached the central hub, they found Commander Harris and Kate Thompson hiding behind an overturned table. Across the room stood the Vespula Queen. She was enormous, easily twice Sadie's size, with a swollen abdomen and more complex armor than the warriors. Multiple limbs moved with disturbing grace as she surveyed the room with compound eyes that glowed yellow in the dim emergency lighting. When the Queen saw Sadie, she let out a high-pitched sound that made Jack's ears hurt. In response, Sadie let out the most powerful roar Jack had ever heard from her. The sound echoed through the hub. A clear challenge from one apex predator to another, the battle that would decide the fate of Outpost Zeta 9 was about to begin. The central hub fell silent after the two roars faded. Jack, Commander Harris, and Kate remained behind their shelter, watching as Sadie and the Vespula Queen sized each other up. The two apex predators circled slowly, neither willing to make the first move. "She's being careful," Kate whispered. "The Queen is much larger," Jack nodded, his heart pounding. Sadie had easily defeated the Vespula warriors, but the Queen was different. Her armor looked thicker, her limbs more powerful, and her eyes held. An intelligence the warriors had lacked. "Should we help?" Commander Harris asked, raising his weapon. "Not yet," Jack said. "Sadie needs space to move. If we start shooting, we might distract her." The Queen made the first move. She lunged forward with surprising speed. Multiple limbs reaching for Sadie, the Draconis dodged sideways, using her wings to gain extra distance. She countered with a quick strike at one of the Queen's limbs. Her claws scraping against the hard armor but not penetrating, the Queen attacked again. This time catching Sadie with a glancing blow that sent her sliding across the floor. Jack winced, fighting the urge to run to his friend. Sadie recovered quickly, shaking her head and growling. The two predators clashed again and again. Sadie was faster and more agile, but the Queen's size and strength gave her a significant advantage. After several minutes of combat, Sadie was breathing hard with visible scratches on her scales. The Queen seemed barely affected. "This isn't working," Jack said. "The Queen's armor is too strong." As if hearing him, Sadie backed away from the Queen and looked toward Jack. She made a series of sounds, chirps and growls that Jack had learned to understand over their years together. "She wants us to do something," Jack told the others. "But what?" Kate was studying the Queen with scientific interest despite the danger. "Look at her eyes," she said. "They're so much larger than the warriors, and they seem sensitive to light." Jack noticed that the Queen kept turning her head away from the emergency lights that were still functioning around the room's perimeter. An idea formed in his mind. "The lights," he said. "Sadie wants us to use the lights." Commander Harris looked skeptical. "What good will that do? Trust me," Jack said. He raised his voice. "Sadie, the eyes. Go for her eyes when we blind her." Sadie chirped in what sounded like agreement. She began moving again, this time positioning herself so that the Queen had to turn toward one of the brighter emergency lights to face her. Jack reached for his tablet, which was linked to the outpost systems. "Kate, I need access to the lighting. Controls for the central hub." Kate quickly entered her authorization code. "What are you going to do?" "Create a distraction," Jack said as he overrode the safety protocols on the emergency lighting system. "Everyone cover your eyes on my mark." Jack waited until Sadie had maneuvered the Queen into the perfect position, with the largest light panel directly behind Sadie. "Now!" Jack shouted as he tapped the command. All the emergency lights in the central hub suddenly blazed at maximum intensity, far brighter than their normal setting. The Queen let out a high-pitched screech of pain and confusion as her sensitive compound eyes were overwhelmed by the sudden glare. Sadie, who had closed her inner eyelids at Jack's warning, seized the opportunity. She launched herself at the disoriented Queen, this time targeting the eyes instead of the armored body. Her claws found their mark, ripping through the delicate tissues of the Queen's massive compound eyes. The Queen's screech turned into a roar of pain. She thrashed wildly, trying to dislodge Sadie, but the Draconis clung to her head, continuing to tear at the now damaged eyes. "Now we can help!" Commander Harris shouted. "Target the joints in her armor." Jack, Harris, and Kate opened fire, their weapons aimed at the gaps between the Queen's armor plates where the softer tissue was exposed. The combined assault was too much for even the mighty Queen. She stumbled, green fluid pouring from her wounds. Sadie delivered the final blow. She found the gap between the armor plates protecting the Queen's neck and sank her teeth deep into the vital area. With a powerful jerk of her head, Sadie tore through the Queen's throat. The Queen collapsed to the floor, her limbs twitching in her final moments. Sadie stood over her fallen enemy, bloodied but victorious. She turned to Jack and made a sound that was neither roar nor chirp, a sound of triumph and relief. Jack rushed to Sadie's side, checking her injuries. "You did it, girl. You saved us all." Over the next few hours, the remaining Vespula warriors throughout the outpost began to lose coordination. Without the Queen's telepathic control, they became confused and easy targets for the outpost's security teams. By the time a response fleet arrived from the nearest military base, the battle was over. 6 months later, Jack stood in a large conference room on Earth. Behind him, on a specially constructed platform, sat Sadie. Her wounds had healed, leaving only a few new scars on her scales to mark the battle with the Vespula Queen. The room was filled with military officers, scientists, and government officials. They had gathered to hear Jack's report on what was now called the Zeta 9 incident, and to see the famous Draconis who had saved an entire outpost. "As you can see," Jack concluded his presentation, "Sadie is not just an animal or a pet. She's an intelligent being capable of complex thought, strategy, and communication. The old stories about Draconis ferox being mindless killers are simply wrong." An admiral in the front row looked skeptical. "Mr. Miller, one friendly Draconis doesn't change the fact that these creatures have been responsible for hundreds of human deaths over the years." "With respect, Admiral," Jack countered, "humans have been responsible for far more Draconis deaths. We've been shooting first and asking questions later. The conflict between our species was based on fear and misunderstanding, not any natural enmity." "And what do you propose we do with this new understanding?" asked a woman wearing the insignia of the Interstellar Diplomatic Corps. Jack smiled. "I propose Project Symbiosis, a new initiative to establish peaceful contact with wild Draconis packs. With Sadie's help, we can learn their language, understand their social structures, and potentially form an alliance." "An alliance?" The Admiral looked shocked. "Against what?" "The Vespula, for one," Jack said. "They've been expanding their territory for years, and Zeta 9 won't be their last target. The Draconis are natural enemies of the Vespula. If we can work together, both our species benefit." The room erupted in discussion. Some officials were clearly intrigued by the idea, while others seemed horrified. Jack waited patiently for the noise to die down. A young reporter stood up. "Mr. Miller, aren't you afraid to return to Draconis territory? These are still dangerous predators." Jack turned to look at Sadie. The massive predator met his gaze with her intelligent emerald eyes. In that moment, Jack remembered everything they had been through together, from the small, injured creature in a container to the powerful ally who had saved an entire outpost. "Look at her," Jack said to the crowd. "Yes, she's a predator, one of the most efficient hunters in known space. But she's also my friend. She could kill me with a single bite, but she chooses not to. She protected me, fought beside me, communicated with me." Sadie, as if understanding she was being discussed, let out a small roar. Several people in the front row flinched and reached for weapons that weren't there. Jack didn't even blink. "That's your answer," Jack said with a smile. "The predator roared, but the human didn't even blink. Because I raised one as a pet. Or, perhaps more accurately, she raised me as a friend." Jack placed his hand on Sadie's neck, feeling the powerful muscles beneath the scales. "We're leaving in 2 weeks on the research vessel Northern Star. Our mission is to find other Draconis and establish communication. Who knows? This could be the beginning of a whole new chapter in human history." As the crowd applauded, some enthusiastically and others hesitantly, Jack looked into Sadie's eyes once more. The predator made a soft purring sound that only Jack could hear, a sound that needed no translation. It meant simply, "We belong together."